A narcissist wants you to believe that you are the problem. They want you to question your worth, your judgment, and even your own reality. But today, I want you to understand something that has the power to change your life forever. The pain a narcissist causes is rarely about who you are. It is about what they are trying so desperately to hide. When someone constantly tears another person down, it is not a reflection of the victim's value. It is often a reflection of the emotional chaos, insecurity, and fear that exists within the person causing the harm. This is why understanding narcissistic behavior is so important. Education gives you clarity, and clarity is the beginning of freedom. The moment you stop asking, "Why am I not enough?" and start asking, "Why do they need to make me feel like I'm not enough?" you begin to reclaim your power. That single shift in perspective can change the direction of your healing journey. One of the greatest misconceptions about narcissists is that they hurt people because they are strong, confident, and emotionally invincible. The reality is often the opposite. Healthy confidence does not require putting others down. Truly secure people celebrate the success of others, accept responsibility for their mistakes, and build relationships based on mutual respect. Narcissistic behavior, however, is often driven by an intense need to protect a fragile self-image. Many narcissists cannot tolerate feelings of inadequacy, rejection, or failure, so they create an illusion of superiority. To maintain that illusion, they may criticize, manipulate, shame, or emotionally injure the people closest to them. Understanding this distinction is not about excusing abusive behavior. It is about recognizing that their actions are rooted in their own unresolved psychological struggles rather than your shortcomings. This knowledge helps survivors stop carrying blame that never belonged to them. Have you ever noticed that the narcissist often targets the people who love them the most? That is not a coincidence. The people closest to them are the ones who see behind the carefully crafted mask they present to the world. To strangers, they may appear charming, generous, intelligent, or successful. They know how to impress people when it benefits them. But inside their private relationships, maintaining that perfect image becomes much more difficult. The closer someone gets, the greater the chance they will notice inconsistencies, manipulation, or emotional immaturity. Instead of responding with honesty or vulnerability, the narcissist often reacts by attacking the very person who sees the truth. They may accuse you of being too sensitive, too demanding, or impossible to please. This tactic shifts attention away from their behavior and places the focus on yours. It becomes a way to protect the false identity they have worked so hard to build. There is another reason narcissists work so hard to hurt others. They confuse control with love. Healthy love allows people to grow, express themselves, and maintain their individuality. Control, however, demands obedience, dependence, and fear. A narcissist may believe that if they can make you doubt yourself, you will become easier to manipulate. They understand that a confident person is difficult to control, so they gradually attack your confidence. They may criticize your appearance, dismiss your opinions, isolate you from supportive relationships, or make you feel guilty for having boundaries. Over time, these behaviors can erode self-esteem and create emotional dependence. This process is not accidental. It is often a pattern designed to keep the narcissist feeling powerful while the other person feels increasingly powerless. Recognizing this pattern is one of the first steps toward breaking free from it. One of the hidden truths about narcissistic behavior is that your greatest strengths can become the very things that threaten them. Your kindness, empathy, honesty, resilience, and emotional intelligence may inspire healthy people. But to a narcissist, these qualities can feel intimidating. Why? Because they expose everything the narcissist struggles to maintain. An emotionally healthy person communicates openly, accepts accountability, and values authenticity. Those qualities shine a light on manipulation, dishonesty, and emotional avoidance. Rather than growing alongside someone who possesses these strengths, the narcissist may attempt to diminish them. They may ridicule your compassion as weakness or portray your confidence as arrogance. Their goal is not to help you improve, but to make themselves feel more secure by reducing your sense of self. The tragedy is that many survivors begin believing these distorted messages. The victory comes when they realize those messages were never true. Many survivors spend years searching for closure. They hope that one day the narcissist will admit the truth, apologize sincerely, or finally recognize the damage they caused. While genuine accountability is always possible for people willing to change, many narcissists resist it because accepting responsibility threatens the very identity they have built. Admitting fault would require them to confront deep feelings of shame they have spent years avoiding. Instead, they may rewrite history, deny events, blame others, or portray themselves as the victim. This behavior can leave survivors feeling confused and emotionally exhausted, but healing does not require the narcissist's confession. Healing begins when you stop waiting for someone else to validate your experience and start trusting what you already know to be true. Your reality does not become less valid simply because someone refuses to acknowledge it. One of the most powerful lessons you can learn is that understanding someone's behavior does not mean accepting it. Psychology helps explain why people act the way they do, but explanation is never the same as justification. Knowing that a narcissist acts from insecurity does not make emotional abuse acceptable. Knowing they experienced difficulties in the past does not erase the harm they caused in the present. Healthy compassion includes compassion for yourself. It allows you to recognize another person's struggles while still protecting your own emotional well-being. Boundaries are not acts of revenge, they are acts of wisdom. Every time you choose peace over chaos, self-respect over approval, and truth over manipulation, you are strengthening the foundation of your future. Perhaps the most beautiful transformation happens when you stop measuring your worth by the way the narcissist treated you. Their inability to love you in a healthy way was never proof that you were unlovable. Their criticism was never an accurate measurement of your value. Their rejection was never a definition of your identity. You were worthy before they entered your life, and you remain worthy after they leave it. Healing means remembering who you were before someone convinced you that you needed their approval to feel complete. It means rebuilding confidence one decision at a time, trusting your instincts again, surrounding yourself with emotionally healthy people, and believing that peace is not something you have to earn. It is something you deserve. As you move forward, remember this truth above all else. The narcissist may have wanted to hurt you because hurting others temporarily distracted them from the pain they refuse to face within themselves. But their choices do not have to become your destiny. You have the ability to break the cycle. You have the power to choose healing instead of bitterness, wisdom instead of confusion, and courage instead of fear. Every day you refuse to let manipulation define your future, you become stronger. Every boundary you set is a declaration that your emotional well-being matters. Every step you take toward healing is proof that your story is not ending in pain. It is beginning with purpose. The greatest victory is not making the narcissist suffer. The greatest victory is becoming so emotionally healthy, so confident, and so peaceful that their attempts to control you no longer have any power. That is the truth they never wanted you to discover. Because the moment you truly believe it, you become impossible to break. A narcissist wants you to believe that you are the problem. But that belief is one of the greatest illusions they create. They want you to question your worth, your judgment, and even your own reality because self-doubt makes you easier to control. The more confused you become, the less likely you are to recognize the manipulation taking place. Instead of questioning their behavior, you begin questioning yourself, and that is exactly where they want you to stay. Many survivors spend years believing they somehow caused the narcissist's anger or disappointment. They replay conversations in their minds, searching for the mistake that triggered the abuse. They apologize for things they never did, accept blame they never deserved, and constantly try to become better in hopes that the relationship will improve. Unfortunately, this cycle rarely ends because the issue was never your imperfections. It was the narcissist's need for control. One of the most powerful tools a narcissist uses is emotional confusion. One day they praise you, making you feel valued and appreciated. The next day they criticize you over something insignificant, leaving you wondering what changed. This constant shift between affection and rejection keeps you emotionally off balance. Instead of feeling secure, you become focused on earning back their approval, giving them even greater influence over your emotions and decisions. The truth is that narcissists often create impossible standards. Even when you meet one expectation, another immediately takes its place. If you become more patient, they say you are still not understanding enough. If you become more supportive, they accuse you of not caring enough. No matter how much you sacrifice, the finish line continues to move because their satisfaction does not come from your growth. It comes from keeping you uncertain about your worth. This is why learning about narcissistic behavior is so life-changing. Education replaces confusion with clarity. You begin to see patterns instead of isolated incidents. You realize that the criticism, blame, and manipulation were not random emotional reactions, but repeated strategies designed to maintain power. Once you recognize these patterns, you stop taking every insult personally because you understand that the behavior follows a predictable cycle. Many narcissists work tirelessly to maintain an image of perfection. They want others to see them as successful, intelligent, attractive, or morally superior. Beneath that carefully constructed image, however, there is often a deep fear of being exposed as flawed or inadequate. Rather than confronting those uncomfortable feelings, they project them onto others. If they secretly feel insecure, they accuse you of being weak. If they struggle with shame, they try to make you feel guilty. By transferring their emotional pain onto someone else, they temporarily escape facing it themselves. This projection is one of the hidden truths behind narcissistic abuse. Their words often reveal more about their internal struggles than they do about your character. When they repeatedly tell you that you are not good enough, it does not automatically mean that statement is true. In many cases, it reflects the painful beliefs they carry about themselves but cannot tolerate acknowledging. Understanding this difference allows you to separate your identity from their accusations. As you begin your healing journey, remember that your value has never been determined by someone else's inability to appreciate you. You were never meant to spend your life proving your worth to a person who benefits from making you feel unworthy. The greatest freedom comes when you stop asking, "Why wasn't I enough for them?" and begin asking, "Why did they need me to believe I wasn't enough?" That single question changes everything. It shifts your focus away from self-blame and toward self-awareness. And when that happens, you stop chasing validation from the person who hurt you and start building a life rooted in confidence, truth, and self-respect. Many people think a narcissist appears fearless because they act confident, speak with authority, and rarely admit when they are wrong. They often carry themselves as though they have all the answers and deserve admiration from everyone around them. This outward confidence can be convincing, causing others to believe they are emotionally strong and completely secure. However, appearances can be deceiving, and understanding the difference between genuine confidence and narcissistic grandiosity is one of the most important lessons in recognizing unhealthy relationships. True confidence is quiet, steady, and does not need constant validation from other people. A genuinely confident person is comfortable admitting mistakes because they understand that making errors does not diminish their worth. They listen to different opinions, celebrate the success of others, and continue growing throughout life. Their self-esteem comes from within rather than depending on praise, attention, or control. This kind of confidence builds healthy relationships because it is rooted in respect rather than superiority. Narcissistic confidence, on the other hand, is often built on a fragile foundation. Many narcissists feel an intense need to appear perfect because they fear what might happen if others see their flaws. Rather than accepting imperfections as a normal part of being human, they may spend enormous amounts of energy protecting an idealized image of themselves. This image becomes so important that any criticism, disagreement, or challenge can feel like a personal attack instead of an opportunity to learn and grow. When that carefully constructed image is threatened, the narcissist may respond with anger, blame, or emotional cruelty. Instead of asking themselves whether the criticism has any truth, they often direct their frustration toward the person who challenged them. This is why small disagreements can quickly become major conflicts. What seems like a simple conversation to you may feel like a threat to their entire identity. Their reaction is less about the issue itself and more about protecting the image they desperately want the world to believe. This explains why narcissists often struggle with accountability. Taking responsibility requires acknowledging imperfection, and for someone whose self-worth depends on appearing superior, that can feel unbearable. Rather than saying, "I made a mistake," they may insist that someone else caused the problem. They deny obvious facts, rewrite events, or accuse others of doing exactly what they themselves have done. These behaviors are not signs of emotional strength. They are signs of emotional avoidance. As a survivor, it is important to understand that you cannot heal another person's insecurity by sacrificing your own well-being. Many people believe that if they become more patient, more loving, or more understanding, the narcissist will finally feel secure enough to change. Unfortunately, lasting change cannot come from another person's efforts. It must come from the individual's willingness to face uncomfortable truths, accept responsibility, and develop emotional maturity. Without that willingness, the cycle of manipulation often continues regardless of how much love or support you offer. The good news is that you do not have to remain trapped in that cycle. Once you recognize that the narcissist's behavior is driven by their own unresolved fears rather than your inadequacy, you begin to release the burden you have been carrying. You stop trying to earn approval that was intentionally made impossible to achieve. Instead, you start investing your energy in rebuilding your own confidence surrounding yourself with emotionally healthy people, and trusting your own judgment again. Real strength is not found in controlling others or hiding your flaws. Real strength is found in facing the truth, embracing growth, and choosing integrity over image. That is the kind of confidence no narcissist can ever take away from you. One of the hardest truths to accept is that a narcissist often uses emotional pain as a tool to gain and maintain control. This does not mean every hurtful comment or cruel action is carefully planned in advance, but over time, many narcissists learn that making another person feel confused, guilty, or insecure gives them a sense of power. When you begin doubting yourself, you are less likely to question their behavior. When you feel guilty, you are more likely to apologize even when you have done nothing wrong. When you fear losing the relationship, you may tolerate treatment that you would never have accepted before. This is how emotional control slowly replaces emotional connection. Healthy relationships are built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. Both people feel safe expressing their thoughts without fear of punishment or humiliation. A narcissistic relationship often operates very differently. Instead of encouraging open communication, the narcissist may use criticism, silent treatment, intimidation, or emotional manipulation to influence your decisions. If you disagree with them, they may accuse you of being disrespectful. If you set a healthy boundary, they may call you selfish. If you express your feelings, they may dismiss them as dramatic or irrational. These reactions are designed to make you question your own perspective while protecting theirs. One of the most common ways emotional pain becomes a weapon is through inconsistency. The narcissist may shower you with praise one moment and completely withdraw affection the next. This unpredictable behavior creates emotional instability because you never know which version of them you will encounter. As a result, you may begin changing your behavior in an effort to avoid conflict or regain their approval. Over time, your emotional energy becomes focused on managing their moods instead of living your own life. Without realizing it, you become trapped in a cycle where your peace depends on someone else's unpredictable behavior. Another powerful form of emotional control is guilt. Narcissists often know exactly how to make you feel responsible for their emotions and choices. If they become angry, they claim you caused it. If they fail, they blame your lack of support. If they behave badly, they may insist that your actions forced them to react that way. This constant shifting of responsibility leaves many survivors feeling emotionally exhausted. They spend years carrying burdens that were never theirs to carry because they have been conditioned to believe that keeping the narcissist happy is their responsibility. Fear also plays a significant role in maintaining control. Some narcissists create fear through explosive anger, while others use subtle tactics such as withdrawal, criticism, or emotional distance. You may begin avoiding certain conversations, hiding your opinions, or suppressing your needs simply to prevent another conflict. Although this may seem like keeping the peace, it slowly comes at the cost of your authenticity. Every time you silence your own voice to avoid someone else's reaction, you lose a small piece of your confidence. Over time, this pattern can make you feel disconnected from the person you once were. It is important to remember that love never requires fear to survive. A healthy relationship allows both people to feel respected, heard, and emotionally safe. You should never have to sacrifice your dignity just to maintain someone's affection. Real love encourages growth, while manipulation demands obedience. Real love values honesty, while control depends on confusion. Understanding this difference is one of the most important steps toward emotional freedom, because it helps you recognize that what you experienced was not a failure on your part, but a pattern of unhealthy behavior designed to maintain power. The beautiful truth is that emotional control loses its power the moment you begin seeing it for what it is. Every time you recognize manipulation instead of accepting blame, you take back a piece of your confidence. Every healthy boundary reminds you that your feelings matter. Every decision to trust your own judgment weakens the influence the narcissist once had over your life. Healing does not happen overnight, but each step toward self-awareness brings greater freedom. The greatest victory is not changing the narcissist. It is reaching a place where their attempts to control your emotions no longer determine the direction of your life. One of the greatest truths hidden beneath narcissistic behavior is the presence of deep, unresolved shame. This is something many people never see because narcissists work tirelessly to create an image that appears confident, successful, and emotionally untouchable. They want the world to believe they are always in control, always right, and always superior to those around them. Admitting weakness would threaten that carefully constructed identity, so they often spend their lives protecting it at all costs. The image they present to others becomes more important than their willingness to face the truth about themselves. This is why understanding the difference between confidence and image management is so important when trying to make sense of narcissistic behavior. It is important to understand that shame and guilt are not the same thing. Guilt is a healthy emotion that says, I made a mistake and I want to make it right. Shame, however, feels much deeper. It whispers, there is something fundamentally wrong with me. Emotionally healthy people learn to tolerate these uncomfortable feelings, accept responsibility, and grow from their experiences. A narcissist often struggles with this process because acknowledging flaws feels unbearable. Instead of using mistakes as opportunities to learn, they may go to extraordinary lengths to avoid confronting anything that threatens their self-image. This fear of shame explains why many narcissists react so strongly to criticism, even when it is respectful or constructive. A simple disagreement can feel like a personal attack because it challenges the image they have worked so hard to protect. Rather than listening with curiosity or considering another perspective, they may become defensive, angry, or dismissive. They might accuse others of being jealous, overly sensitive, or intentionally trying to hurt them. In reality, their reaction is often driven by an intense desire to avoid experiencing feelings they have never learned to manage in a healthy way. Projection becomes one of the most common defenses against hidden shame. Instead of facing uncomfortable emotions within themselves, narcissists often place those emotions onto someone else. If they secretly feel inadequate, they may constantly tell you that you are not good enough. If they struggle with dishonesty, they may accuse you of lying. If they fear abandonment, they may repeatedly claim that you cannot be trusted. This psychological defense allows them to distance themselves from painful emotions, while leaving another person to carry the emotional burden. Unfortunately, many survivors begin believing these accusations, not realizing they are absorbing feelings that never belonged to them in the first place. Another way narcissists hide their inner shame is by seeking constant admiration and validation. Compliments, attention, status, and external success may temporarily silence their inner insecurity, but only for a short time. Because the relief never lasts, they often need more praise, more recognition, and more control to maintain the illusion of confidence. This is why no amount of admiration is ever enough. The emptiness they are trying to escape cannot be permanently filled by achievements or by controlling other people. Without genuine self-awareness and accountability, the cycle simply continues. For those who have been hurt by a narcissist, understanding this hidden truth can be incredibly freeing. It helps you realize that their inability to value you was not evidence that you lacked value. Their constant criticism, blame, and manipulation were often attempts to protect themselves from emotions they refused to face. While this understanding does not excuse abusive behavior, it does help remove the burden of self-blame. You no longer have to wonder whether you could have loved them enough to make them change. Their healing was never your responsibility. As you continue your own journey, remember that real strength does not come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from having the courage to acknowledge your imperfections without allowing them to define you. Healthy people grow because they are willing to face uncomfortable truths. They apologize when they are wrong, learn from their experiences, and become wiser through self-reflection. You have the opportunity to choose a different path from the one the narcissist chose. Instead of hiding behind pride, you can embrace authenticity. Instead of living to protect an image, you can live with honesty, peace, and self-respect. That is the kind of emotional freedom no manipulation can ever take away from you. One of the most confusing experiences for anyone in a relationship with a narcissist is realizing that the hurt does not stop even after the narcissist seems to have achieved what they wanted. You may think, if they already won the argument, why do they keep attacking me? Or perhaps you wonder, if they have all the control they wanted, why are they still trying to make me feel small? The answer lies in understanding that, for many narcissists, control is never a destination. It is a constant need. The moment they stop feeling in control, their inner insecurity begins to resurface. Because of this, they often continue criticizing, manipulating, or emotionally hurting others long after there is no logical reason to do so. Their behavior is not about resolving conflict. It is about maintaining a sense of emotional dominance. Unlike healthy people, who usually seek peace after disagreements, narcissists often struggle to let conflicts end naturally. A healthy person wants understanding, compromise, and emotional repair. Once an issue is resolved, they move forward because the goal was never to defeat the other person. A narcissist, however, may continue bringing up old mistakes, reminding you of your failures, or creating new arguments even when the original problem has already been settled. This repeated reopening of emotional wounds keeps you feeling uncertain and prevents you from fully recovering your confidence. As long as you remain emotionally shaken, they often feel more secure in their position. Another reason the narcissist continues hurting people is that temporary victories never satisfy deeper emotional emptiness. Imagine trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour into it, the bucket never stays full. In a similar way, external control, admiration, or power cannot permanently fill unresolved emotional insecurity. Every insult, every manipulation, and every attempt to dominate another person may provide a brief feeling of superiority, but that feeling fades quickly. Instead of addressing the real issue within themselves, they search for another opportunity to regain that temporary emotional boost, creating a cycle that repeats itself over and over again. This is why many survivors notice the same patterns occurring regardless of who the narcissist is involved with. They may leave one relationship only to repeat identical behaviors in the next. Different names, different faces, and different circumstances do not automatically change deeply rooted emotional patterns. If someone refuses to examine their own behavior, they often carry the same unhealthy habits into every new relationship they enter. Understanding this can help survivors stop believing that they were uniquely responsible for the abuse. The problem was not your inability to love them enough. The problem was their unwillingness to confront the patterns they carried within themselves. Many narcissists also struggle with genuine emotional satisfaction because their relationships are often based on control rather than connection. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, honesty, empathy, and mutual respect. These qualities can feel uncomfortable for someone who fears exposing their true self. As a result, they may replace closeness with control, believing that keeping someone emotionally dependent is the same as being loved. But dependence is not love, and fear is not loyalty. A relationship built on manipulation may create compliance, but it can never create genuine trust. Deep inside, that lack of authentic connection often leaves them feeling just as empty as before, even if they never admit it. For survivors, one of the most important lessons is realizing that you do not have to participate in this endless cycle. You do not have to keep defending yourself against accusations that constantly change. You do not have to spend your life proving your worth to someone who measures success by keeping you emotionally off balance. The moment you stop seeking validation from the person who repeatedly invalidated you, something powerful begins to happen. Your energy shifts away from trying to fix an impossible situation and toward rebuilding your own life. Your confidence slowly returns because it is no longer dependent on someone else's unpredictable approval. Always remember that your greatest victory is not making the narcissist realize what they lost. Your greatest victory is becoming emotionally healthy enough that their opinions no longer define your identity. When you stop reacting to every criticism, stop believing every accusation, and stop carrying responsibility for someone else's unresolved pain, you break free from the invisible chains that once held you captive. Healing is not about defeating the narcissist. It is about refusing to let their dysfunction determine the direction of your future. That is a victory far greater than any argument you could ever win. Breaking free from a narcissistic relationship is about much more than creating physical distance. Many people believe that once they stop communicating with the narcissist, the healing process will automatically begin. While distance is often an important first step, true recovery requires healing the emotional patterns that were created during the relationship. This is especially important because many survivors develop what psychologists describe as a trauma bond, a powerful emotional attachment formed through repeated cycles of affection, manipulation, criticism, and intermittent kindness. These unpredictable highs and lows can make it incredibly difficult to leave, even when the relationship has become deeply unhealthy. Understanding this process helps you realize that your struggle to move on is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that your mind and emotions have been conditioned by a cycle of inconsistency. One of the reasons trauma bonds become so powerful is because the relationship rarely consists of constant cruelty. If it did, leaving would often feel much easier. Instead, moments of emotional pain are interrupted by brief periods of affection, promises, apologies, or hope that things will finally change. These positive moments create emotional confusion because they make you believe the loving version of the narcissist is the real one, while the hurtful behavior is only temporary. As time passes, you begin holding on to the memory of who they could be instead of accepting who they consistently choose to be. This hope keeps many people trapped far longer than they ever imagined. Healing begins the moment you start trusting patterns instead of promises. A narcissist may say all the right words when they fear losing control. They may promise to change, express regret, or suddenly become affectionate again. While meaningful change is possible for anyone willing to seek genuine help and take consistent responsibility, lasting transformation requires sustained effort over time. It cannot be measured by emotional speeches, temporary kindness, or a few good days. The healthiest question is not, what are they saying today? But rather, what have their actions consistently shown me over time? Looking at patterns instead of isolated moments protects you from becoming trapped by false hope. Another essential part of recovery is rebuilding your relationship with yourself. Narcissistic relationships often leave people doubting their instincts because they have spent months or even years being told that their feelings are wrong, their memories are inaccurate, or their needs are unreasonable. Gradually, survivors begin silencing their own inner voice to avoid conflict. Healing means reversing that process. It means learning to trust your intuition again, respecting your emotions, and recognizing that your experiences matter. Every time you listen to your own judgment instead of automatically questioning it, you strengthen the confidence that manipulation once tried to destroy. Healthy boundaries are another powerful part of emotional freedom. Many survivors fear setting boundaries because they have been taught that saying no makes them selfish or uncaring. In reality, boundaries are not walls designed to punish other people. They are guidelines that protect your emotional well-being and define how you expect to be treated. A healthy person may not always like your boundaries, but they can respect them. Someone who becomes angry every time you establish a healthy limit is often revealing that they benefited from your lack of boundaries in the past. Protecting your peace is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of self-respect. As your healing continues, you may discover that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You can choose to let go of resentment without allowing harmful people back into your life. You can wish someone healing while also recognizing that you deserve relationships built on honesty, empathy, and mutual respect. Emotional maturity does not require you to tolerate repeated harm. In fact, one of the healthiest decisions you can make is refusing to confuse compassion with self-sacrifice. Caring about others should never come at the cost of abandoning yourself. The most beautiful transformation happens when your life is no longer centered on understanding the narcissist, but on rediscovering yourself. Instead of wondering whether they miss you, you begin asking what brings you peace. Instead of chasing closure from someone unwilling to provide it, you create your own closure through growth and self-awareness. Every healthy choice you make becomes evidence that your future is no longer controlled by your past. Every boundary, every moment of self-respect, and every step toward emotional healing is proof that you are becoming stronger than the pain you endured. The narcissist may have influenced part of your story, but they do not get to write the ending. Your healing, your strength, and your future belong to you, and that is where your greatest power truly begins. One of the greatest turning points in your healing journey comes when you stop seeking revenge and start seeking understanding. After experiencing manipulation, betrayal, and emotional abuse, it is completely natural to want the narcissist to experience the same pain they caused you. You may hope they finally realize what they lost, admit everything they did, or suffer the consequences of their actions. Those feelings are understandable because they come from a place of deep hurt. However, if your happiness depends on whether the narcissist changes or faces justice, they continue to occupy space in your mind long after the relationship has ended. True freedom begins when your peace is no longer connected to their choices, but to your own growth and emotional healing. Many survivors believe that closure can only come from the narcissist offering a sincere apology. They wait for the day when the narcissist admits the lies, accepts responsibility, and expresses genuine remorse. While that can happen in some situations, it is often not something you can depend on. A narcissist who refuses to confront their own behavior may continue denying the truth, blaming others, or pretending nothing ever happened. If you make their apology the condition for your healing, you hand them control over your recovery. The healthier path is realizing that closure is not something another person gives you. It is something you create by accepting reality, learning from your experience, and choosing to move forward despite the absence of the answers you once hoped to receive. Understanding the truth about narcissistic behavior is one of the most powerful forms of emotional protection. Knowledge helps replace confusion with clarity. Instead of endlessly wondering why they treated you the way they did, you begin recognizing the patterns that drove their behavior. You understand that manipulation was about maintaining control, not about your lack of worth. You realize that their criticism reflected their own unresolved struggles rather than your value as a human being. This understanding does not erase the pain, but it prevents you from carrying unnecessary guilt into the future. It allows you to separate their behavior from your identity. Healing also means rebuilding the relationship you have with yourself. During a narcissistic relationship, many people lose sight of who they are because they become so focused on pleasing someone who can never truly be satisfied. They stop pursuing their passions, silence their opinions, and ignore their emotional needs in an effort to avoid conflict. Recovery is the process of reclaiming those lost parts of yourself. It means remembering what brings you joy, surrounding yourself with people who respect you, and learning to trust your own judgment again. Every healthy decision you make becomes another reminder that your life belongs to you, not to the person who tried to control it. As you continue growing, you may notice something remarkable. The things that once triggered overwhelming fear begin losing their power. A message from the narcissist no longer controls your emotions. Their opinions no longer determine your self-worth. Their attempts to manipulate you become easier to recognize because you have developed wisdom through experience. This transformation does not happen overnight, but every step you take toward emotional health strengthens your resilience. Instead of reacting from fear, you begin responding from confidence. Instead of chasing approval, you begin protecting your peace. One of the most important lessons you can learn is that your kindness was never your weakness. Your ability to love deeply, forgive sincerely, and care about others are qualities to be treasured, not regretted. The problem was never that you loved too much. The problem was that your kindness was given to someone who chose to exploit it rather than appreciate it. Do not allow one unhealthy relationship to convince you that compassion is dangerous. The goal is not to become cold or distrustful. The goal is to become wiser about where you invest your heart and who has earned the privilege of your trust. Never forget that your story is far greater than the chapter that included the narcissist. They may have caused pain, created confusion, and left emotional scars, but they do not have the authority to define your future. Every challenge you overcome becomes part of your strength. Every lesson you learn becomes part of your wisdom. Every boundary you establish becomes evidence that you value yourself more than you once did. The greatest victory is not watching the narcissist fall. It is watching yourself rise. It is waking up one day and realizing that your happiness no longer depends on their approval, their apology, or their presence. That is the truth they hoped you would never discover, because once you understand your own worth, your inner peace becomes something no one can steal, manipulate, or destroy.